Welcome to Nuked Radio. This is episode 83. Today is Tuesday, January the 8th, 2013. I'm your host, Christina Consolo. With me today is Jules. Hey, Jules, how are you and your family doing sickness-wise right now? Have you guys had the flu yet?
Well, we've had this respiratory thing that a few of my friends have had diagnosed as paraflu, but it's not actually a flu. It's like a respiratory virus that's been around for quite a number of generations, but it hangs on forever, and in the immunocompromised, it definitely can progress to bronchitis or pleurisy, pneumonia. You know, it can be kind of dangerous. So I have seen, though, the new flu maps. They're pretty frightening. And I'll tell you what, I know a lot of people, as you do, just through what we do all across the country. And everyone that I've been speaking to has this. And it hangs on for weeks on end.
Yeah, I had a number of emails about the possible relation to radiation or mutations of the strains. So we're going to be talking mostly about that during the show today. And it's happening worldwide. I mean, just today there was like 4 more epidemics posted on RSOE. So, and we're going to talk about solutions to that too. And by the end of the show today, you're going to probably want to wear a mask outside for a couple of reasons. But before we get into that, we're going to cover some important nuke news that's going on right now. There was a nuke event at the Hanford site posted today on RSOE. And you guys probably know, some people call this the Doom map. It's a Hungarian site or a news aggregate that posts earthquake info, volcano info, nuclear events, hazmat events, epidemics, plane crashes, landslides, meteors, which they call event into space, technological disasters such as buildings or bridge collapses, etc., etc. And let's see, the one that was posted about Hanford this morning, 9 workers at the Hanford plutonium finishing plant are being checked as a precaution to determine whether they may have breathed in radioactive material. Last week, radiation release alarms sounded as workers were completing the removal of contaminated material from within a glove box. No contamination was found on the skin or personal clothing of those workers who were using respirators. However, nasal smears indicated radioactive material might have been breathed in by some of the workers who helped the other workers remove the protective clothing worn over their personal clothing after the alarm sounded, according to Hill Plateau Remediation Company. The 4 workers who were at the glove box and the 5 workers who helped them remove their protective clothing will have further tests. Results should be available within 2 weeks. And another nuclear event which happened last night, this is from Australia. A fire which broke out at a nuclear research facility in Sydney South this morning has been extinguished. The alarm was raised at Lucas Heights nuclear plant after smoke was reported coming from the back of the facility, which contains 2 nuclear reactors. Operators now say the fire has been extinguished and the reactors made safe. Fire and Rescue Superintendent Tom Cooper said the call from the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organization came at 10:36 a.m. local time. He told AAP the fire was in an electrical substation at the rear of the facility. A statement said there were reports of smoke before their on-site fire crews extinguished the fire in the electrical wiring. It's not believed that this is related to the current weather conditions, and the Opal reactor was shut down and is safe. No injuries have been reported, and there's no ongoing issue at the site. The Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency has been notified. Now, the RSOE map should probably include this event. Actually, they should have something up for Fukushima in general, since it is an ongoing disaster. Anytime they find severe levels of contamination, they will usually post that. Fukushima Daiichi worker, I saw black smoke that came from the common spent fuel pool's chimney. I wonder if it was the smoke of the boiler. It's not fire. 2 days ago, on the 7th, on the 6th, there was black smoke, which turned gray and then white, that was coming out from an area near what looked to be reactor 2. It shows up on the TBS JNN camera. It actually shows up on TEPCO camera as well. It was January 7th in Japan. It was the 6th here. Let's see. This was the Fukushima worker that is usually in contact with Fukushima Diary. And another item that Fukushima Diary had posted on December 20th was that the common usage pool is more heated than the spent fuel pools of reactors 1, 2, and 3. The source added the temperature increasing rate in spent fuel pool of reactor 1 and 2 as well. The result shows the temperature increasing is higher than reactor 1, 2, and 3. The one in reactor 4 shows the highest increasing rate, but it was in October, where all the other data was taken in November and December. Reactor 4 is the highest in terms of temperature, and the common spent fuel pool follows that. So TEPCO has not released a statement yet, to my knowledge, of where that fire, where that smoke originated from. But anytime you see smoke at any nuclear site, it's not good, especially though when it's coming from something at Fukushima. So we need to all watch the RAD levels in Japan, Hawaii, and the West Coast over the next 5 to 7 days. In fact, if there was a release, it should be showing up today already in Japan. And speaking of high radiation, I put out a video yesterday of the Obama family vacation, thanks to Linda Menzies, who messaged me 2 nights ago that a few hours after Hawaii hit 900 CPMs, Obama and his family abruptly left Hawaii. So I asked her for some links, and she sent me a whole bunch of stuff from the Hawaiian Reporter and a bunch of different news sites. And sure enough, Obama's family was scheduled to be in Hawaii for 20 days. According to Reuters, they left Friday night, the 21st of December. So their first official day of vacation was December 22nd, which means that they should have returned January the 10th. But they left in the early morning of the 6th, and it was just a few hours after we had this 3 times hazmat radiation level picked up. And the HawaiianReporter.com gave the reason for them leaving early as due to rain. And Linda also told me the next day was sunny and clear, so there wasn't really a reason for them to leave due to weather. But as I'm going through these articles, I notice that all the mainstream reports are showing the president getting hit by a wave in the ocean. And I actually remember that picture from last year because he had his mouth open. I remember thinking, wow, I bet he get a mouthful of radiation. And so I confirmed this by going to the White House Flickr account. And most of the news stories didn't caption it that way. They ran it like it was a current picture. In fact, the White House provided the mainstream media with this picture, even though it's a year old. Now, the Huffington Post caught it, and they captioned it appropriately as being a year old. But, it's very misleading. And when you think about, the sick fish and the sick sea turtles and the massive coral die-offs going on and the tsunami debris that's washing up and the fact that, even Chris Busby said that the water plume from Fukushima had already reached Hawaii long ago, plus the fact that they've been having RAD spikes from 100 to 300 numerous times over the past few weeks, actually since the big earthquake, since the I don't remember if it was a 7.2 or 7.3. Since that earthquake, when the corium got shook up in the ground, Hawaii's been seeing these spikes. I wouldn't be swimming there either. Now, the White House also publishes a list of things that the president and his family did on their vacation, and most of it was indoors, except for him golfing, and they hiked one time to a waterfall. So I posted this video last night. It's called Obama Gets Blasted with RADS, and so far 2,000 people have seen it. There's some very funny comments from people underneath the video. Please share it around. It's a good icebreaker for those who are not yet awake to the contaminated Pacific and the cover-up going on by the Obama administration. Now, speaking of contamination of the Pacific, Any News ran an article that they grabbed from NHK on January the 4th. Radiation levels increasing at Fukushima plant. No solution to tainted water. Hundreds of tons flowing into reactor buildings every day. Each day, about 400 tons of underground water has been flowing into the reactor buildings. The water becomes contaminated with radioactive materials. The volume of the water is continuing to rise, increasing radiation levels at the plant. The company plans to pump underground water to prevent it from flowing into the reactor buildings. It doesn't say where they're going to pump it. It will also install steel walls underground to block contaminated water from leaking into the sea. Now, they've been talking about that, doing that at Reactor 1 for months and months and months, that they were going to build this 100-foot long wall underground, and so they're still talking about it. Now, scientists have known for a long time that radiation can cause mutations. And with all the flu going around and other epidemics, and I'm going to read the list in a moment, it's important to know it takes very little radiation. Even a single X-ray will mutate the DNA of fruit flies. And we have a clip to play, and Jules might not be ready. So let me go through some of these epidemics that are being posted today on RSOE. Israel, the West Bank region, currently has 187 cases of H1N1. Pakistan, in the Karachi region, has 600 active cases of the measles. The Philippines, in the Albay region, has an outbreak of chikungunya fever, which is a mosquito-borne virus which causes flu and joint swelling. And in Darfur, Africa, in multiple regions, there's 125 cases and so far 30 deaths from yellow fever, which is also spread by mosquitoes and includes bleeding from the mouth and nose. Now, in the U.S., we're just getting started with flu season. I'm going to read an article from the CDC about that. Jules, can we play that clip?
Scientists have found that mutations can be artificially induced in several ways. Back in 1926, working in his lab at the University of Texas, Dr. Herman J. Muller began some new experiments. He set up an X-ray machine in his laboratory. His purpose was to see if mutations could be caused by radiation. He conducted his X-ray experiments on the fruit fly. X-rays can produce some striking abnormalities among the descendants of irradiated fruit flies. Nearly wingless flies. Flies with extra wings. White-eyed flies. Muller found that X-rays can also have a deadly effect. When he X-rayed fruit flies, a certain proportion of their descendants died as embryos and the eggs never hatched. Scientists have photographed irradiated cells and find that strange things happen. This is a normal cell dividing. The chromosomes split, draw apart, and two new cells are formed. These are cells that have been irradiated. They cannot divide normally. Some of the chromosomes are broken. Some are misshapen. Sometimes chromosomes fail to split, and the cell cannot reproduce. But lighter doses of radiation may cause changes that can't be seen in the chromosomes, apparently by producing changes in the genes themselves. Thus, the descendants of irradiated germ cells give us albino corn, distorted ears of corn, and stunted plants.
But Dr. Baxter, are all the effects of radiation bad?
Most of them are. Therefore, we must be very careful when we use radiation.
Posted by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, January 4th of 2013. Influenza activity continues to increase in the United States, and most of the country is now experiencing high levels of influenza-like illness, according to CDC's latest Flu View report. Reports of flu-like illnesses are nearing what have been peak levels during moderately severe seasons, according to Dr. Joe Brzee. CDC continues to recommend influenza vaccination and antiviral treatment when appropriate at this time. I tried to get Tamiflu for one of my kids. I had a kid that came down with this just rapid onset flu. She was fine 1 minute, and like the next minute her and I are sitting in the kitchen talking and her whole face went red. And I'm like, what's wrong? You look terrible. And she's like, I don't know, I feel really nauseous all of a sudden. And she was sick for about 3 days, and her doctor said, you can get Tamiflu. So I go to the pharmacy to get it. They're completely sold out. And the pharmacist said that all of CVS was sold out and that they wouldn't be able to get it in for a couple weeks. While we can't say for certain how severe this season will be, we can say that a lot of people are getting sick with the flu, and we are getting reports of severe illness and hospitalizations, says Brzee, who is the chief of the Epidemiology and Prevention branch in CDC's Influenza Division. Anyone who has not already been vaccinated should do so now, and it's important to remember that people who have severe flu illness or who are at high risk of serious flu-related complications should get treated with antiviral medications if they get flu symptoms, regardless of whether or not they got vaccinated. Also, you don't need to wait for a positive laboratory test to start taking antivirals. The CDC tracks flu activity year-round and publishes a report weekly on Fridays. According to this surveillance, the proportion of people seeing their healthcare provider in the United States has been elevated for 4 consecutive weeks, climbing sharply from 2.8% to 5.6% during that time. Last season, which was relatively mild, it peaked at 2.2%. Comparatively, during 98 and 99, and again in 2003 to 2004, which were moderately severe seasons, the flu peaked at 7.6%. We're weeks away, though, from the peak. That's the thing. It's already really high for this time of year. While the timing of influenza season also is impossible to predict, based on past experience, it's likely that flu activity will continue for some time. During the past 10 flu seasons, ILI remained at or above baseline for an average of 12 consecutive weeks, within a range of 1 week to 16 weeks. During the pandemic, the proportion of visits to doctors remained above the national baseline for 19 consecutive weeks. I'll drop this article into chat. We know it's going on, and we know it's probably going to get worse, so what do you do about it? The number one thing that I do is wash my hands and, of course, try to avoid being around anybody with it. This is from WebMD by David Freeman. Flu symptoms can cause a world of misery, from fever and cough to sore throat, nasal congestion, aches, and chills. But there are ways to feel better. Prescription antiviral medications may help ease symptoms of both seasonal and H1N1 flu when taken shortly after you get sick. In many cases, however, simple home remedies may be all you need for relief of mild to moderate flu symptoms. WebMD asked experts to suggest 10 natural remedies for the flu. Number 1, drink up. The flu can leave you dehydrated, especially if fever is accompanied by vomiting or diarrhea. So be sure to get enough fluids. Water is fine. So are fruit juices, soda, and electrolyte beverages. You may want to stay away from caffeinated drinks because caffeine is a diuretic. Herbal tea with honey can soothe a sore throat, and if you feel nauseated, try taking small sips of liquids because gulps may make you throw up. How can you be sure you're getting enough fluid? Your urine should be pale yellow, almost colorless. What about drinking alcohol? No way. When you have the flu, the last thing you want to do is drink alcohol, says William Schaffner, MD, chairman of preventive medicine at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine in Nashville, Tennessee. It makes you sleepy, and flu does that already. Number 2, sip some soup. For generations, caring parents have been serving chicken soup to kids with colds and flu, but was mom right? Possibly. A 2000 study published in the journal Chest shows that chicken soup may help relieve symptoms of upper respiratory tract infections. I believe that chicken soup does help with symptoms, says Reed Blackwelder, MD, professor of family medicine at the College of Medicine in East Tennessee State University, but not all doctors agree that chemistry alone explains the soup's apparent benefits. When you lean over a bowl of hot chicken soup and the vapor gets up your nose, you feel better, says Schaffner. But some of the benefit is clearly emotional. It just makes you feel better having someone make soup for you. Number 3, be a couch potato. The advice may be cliche, but it's sound. Listen to your body. If it's telling you not to exercise, don't. If it's urging you to spend all day in bed, do. Don't press on with daily responsibilities, even in the face of severe cold or flu symptoms. Rest is another way of supporting the body's ability to fight infection. And don't skimp on nighttime sleep. Good sleep cycles help the immune system work well, so it's important to get your full 8 hours of sleep each night, says Schaffner. Number 4, humidify. Breathing moist air helps ease nasal congestion and sore throat pain. One effective strategy is to indulge in a steamy shower several times a day, or just turn on the shower and sit in the bathroom for a few minutes, inhaling the steam. Another is to use a humidifier. Clean it regularly to make sure it's free of mold and other impurities. I'm actually lucky because the apartment complex I live in has a steam room. I go over there almost every day. I love it. Number 5, pitch a tent. Need a quick way to open clogged airways? Bring a pot of water to a boil and remove it from the heat. Drape a towel over your head, close your eyes, and lean over the water under the tent, breathing deeply through your nose for 30 seconds. David Kiefer, MD, clinical instructor of family medicine at the University of Washington School of Medicine, recommends adding a drop or 2 of peppermint or eucalyptus oil to the water for extra phlegm-busting power. Repeat this as often as necessary to ease congestion. People with asthma should not use this method of decongestion. Number 6, try a warm compress. On the forehead and nose, a warm cloth is a great way to relieve headache or sinus pain. If I get a head pain with a cold, I usually use a hot water bottle, and I'll just lay my head back and put the hot water bottle right over my forehead. Number 7, be a sucker. Cough drops, throat lozenges, and hard candy can be surprisingly effective at easing a cough or sore throat. Some doctors, including Kiefer, swear by lozenges containing slippery elm. Others recommend zinc to help shorten cold symptoms, though Schaffner is not convinced of their effectiveness. If there is an effect against colds and flu, it's a small one, he says. I wish their effect were as good as their taste is bad. Number 8, swish and spit. Gargling with salt water helps to get rid of the thick mucus that can collect at the back of the throat, especially after you've been lying down. It can also help ease stuffy ears by opening clogged eustachian tubes, Kiefer tells WebMD in an email. Number 9, try nasal irrigation. To ease stuffiness and postnasal drip and perhaps cut the risk of developing a sinus infection, some doctors recommend nasal irrigation. You can buy a neti pot in natural food stores and some drugstores or opt for a saline squeeze bottle. You pour salt water into one nostril and let it run out the other, clearing out your nasal passages. You can buy a pre-made saline solution or make it by mixing salt and lukewarm water. And number 10, line up a caregiver. A caregiver can't lower your temperature or cure a sore throat, but having someone to tuck you into bed and bring you fluids is very comforting, says Blackwelder. If a friend or family member offers to help, even if it's only to stop by and check in on you, count your blessings and take them up on it. So that's 10 home remedies for flu symptoms. Now I received an article from a gentleman named Major William Fox. He is a book publisher, and he does interviews with Loren Murray about the Fukushima problem. He's an activist. He also does a lot of work with transcribing interviews. In fact, that's how he and I met, was he emailed me to ask me if I wouldn't mind having the Busby interview that I did transcribed and put into a book that he was publishing. He is the head publisher at America First Books and president of the America First Institute. And this was the email that he sent me about this lovely article that I want to share with you guys today. It says, "Dear fellow citizen, I wish to bring to your attention Fukushima radiation present in America," which was posted very recently by W. Leon Smith, publisher of the Lone Star Iconoclast. I have also reproduced this article in the appendix below. I was personally very much involved in the creation of this article, since it features many quotes from myself and pictures taken of me wearing a respirator. I welcome your comments regarding the emerging respirator resistance of the Fukushima Truth Movement that I am promoting. Best regards, William B. Fox. We've had him scheduled to be on the show a number of times, and the first time he wrote to me was in mid-October. That was around the time I had pneumonia, and so we've had to cancel on him a number of times, but I'm hoping to get him on the show in the next 2 weeks or so. Most Americans are unaware that harmful radiation is making its way throughout the world, putting at risk the health of millions, if not billions, of individuals. The effects are currently creeping up on most of Earth's inhabitants, although they cannot identify the source. According to scientists, they will become lifetime certainties for future generations as well. One culprit stems from the recent disaster perpetrated at the Fukushima power plant in Japan, from which radioactive plumes are constantly traveling to neighboring shores and are being dispersed through rainfall on the homeland. Other radiation exposures derive from the use of depleted uranium in military munitions that aerosolize into the atmosphere when they explode. Nuclear power plant emissions and bomb test fallout are still hovering in the atmosphere. Americans are also subjected to many forms of aerial chemical attack that include such contaminants as sulfur dioxide, lead, mercury, the toxic dispersant Corexit deployed by BP in the Gulf disaster, and chemtrails that contain the elements of aluminum and barium. Chemtrails are part of the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP, with facilities located around the world in places like Alaska, Norway, Japan, and Russia. According to former Lawrence Livermore Lab geoscientist and whistleblower Loren Murray, whose works are archived at, and he posts a link, HAARP was developed as the next Manhattan Project during the Cold War for a wide variety of purposes, some of which are very sinister. HAARP includes not only advanced electromagnetic technologies prophesied by the electrical genius Nikola Tesla for use in underground oil exploration and military over-the-horizon radars, but also for darker applications that include mind control, weather warfare, and inducing earthquakes around the world. The latter two applications effectively weaponize both the Earth's atmosphere and the Earth itself. Murray contends that the study of the real background behind HAARP provides an important perspective to help us understand why major media controlled by globalists in Japan, America, the UK, and elsewhere have remained mostly silent about the Fukushima radiation threat, which threatens to become a major extinction-level event for mankind and many other species around the planet. Ms. Murray explains how major strategic power bases of advanced industrial nations have fallen into the hands of a criminally insane globalist power elite with very un-American values, whose agendas include global depopulation, one world government, and the creation of a total police state in America. These globalists also envision a suicidal Masada or Samson's option plan in which nuclear power plants can be used as pre-positioned dirty nuclear bombs to take down the world. As one example of Murray's research, see the interview Fukushima HAARP Nuclear Attack by CIA, DOE, EP for London banks on YouTube, which helps to explain why the American public is being deliberately kept in the dark while it is being slowly destroyed by radiation and other contaminants. Respiratory problems, birth defects, and cancers are just 3 of the end results that scientists say will escalate as time moves forward. According to former U.S. Marine Corps Reserve Major William B. Fox, who has written about his work as a cyber activist along with other former military intelligence professionals in his Mission of Conscience series, we have to watch the air we breathe, particularly when it rains, because this is when most fallout comes down. We also have to be aware of fallout that remobilizes into the air when it gets windy. It is also very important that we watch out for contaminated food and water, because the tragic aftermath of the April 1986 Chernobyl meltdown shows that bioaccumulation and biomagnification within the food chain compromises major threats to public health over the long run. Lastly, we are getting hit with a very serious forms of chemical contamination from a myriad of other directions, ranging from toxic halogens deliberately placed in public drinking water to harmful additives like aspartame and monosodium glutamate inserted into food to poison like mercury-laced thimerosal and formaldehyde found in vaccines. Chemical contaminants typically have a multiplier effect in harming humans when combined with radiation from Fukushima and other sources. Major Fox said that according to Los Angeles-based journalist Michael Collins at EnviroReporter.com, chemtrails are even causing radionuclides to precipitate into the dry areas like Death Valley. It is almost like the malevolent globalists described by Loren Murray are saying we are coming after all of America with our global depopulation program. Even after those who seek refuge in the desert, he added, if all this seems far-fetched, Americans have already been under a continuing stealth nuclear attack for decades that has been largely unreported by establishment media. Murray has explained how nuclear power plant emissions have caused people who live within a 5-kilometer radius of a nuclear power plant to have more than twice the rate of radiation-related ailments compared to the rest of the population. Bomb test fallout caused SAT scores to drop about 12% from radiation-related mental impairments in vast population groups. This radiation has also significantly bolstered infant mortality and cancer rates across America. In an article written by Alfred Weber, Murray is quoted as saying that Dr. Ernest Sternglass was able to show that the decline in SAT scores was directly related to the amount of fission products released each year from bomb tests. The SAT scores never recovered after bomb testing ended because nuclear power plant fission products replaced bomb testing radioactive pollution. The annual average decline in the scores inversely correlates with the total kiloton equivalent of nuke tests conducted at the Nevada test site the same year. The lower the SAT score, the more radiation released in that year from bomb testing at the NTS. According to Murray, Fukushima radiation is now adding insult to injury. It has caused the readings of her Geiger counter inside her home in Berkeley, California, to show double the background radiation that it registered just prior to the Fukushima meltdowns. As a means of protection against the ongoing nuclear and chemical assault, Major Fox has begun a campaign to persuade citizens to use respirators. He notes, admittedly, radionuclides in fallout usually come in the size of nanoparticles, which means that they are so small that they can easily get absorbed through the skin or pass through gas masks and filters. However, it is also true that they tend to attach themselves to rain droplets, mist, and dust. Therefore, while a respirator certainly will not screen out all radionuclides, it can certainly screen out a significant amount, and every little bit helps to keep one's body burden of internal contamination as low as possible. Generally speaking, internal contamination is vastly more dangerous than external forms of radiation because radioactive particles inside the body are continually firing off short-range alpha and beta as well as gamma forms of radiation against adjacent cells 24/7, causing DNA disruptions that can cause cancers and other horrors whereas external radiation usually consists mainly of long-range gamma radiation, similar to X-rays that people tend to experience during relatively brief periods. While there are a number of food supplements and drugs that can help flush out radioactive heavy metals that get inside one's body, unfortunately they can't get everything out. Quite a few long-lived isotopes, such as radioactive cesium, which tends to gravitate towards muscles, plutonium, which tends to gravitate towards the lung, liver, kidney, lymph, bone, and gonadal tissues, and radioactive strontium, which tends to accumulate in bones, can stay lodged in one's body doing damage 24/7 well beyond the day a person dies. If an internally contaminated person is cremated, these isotopes can go up the chimney and get breathed in by someone else, repeating the damage cycle. The radioactive isotope cesium-137, which constitutes a large percentage of Fukushima fallout, has a half-life of about 30 years. We have also been dosed with plutonium-239, which has a half-life of 24,100 years. Uranium-235 has a half-life of 703.8 million years. These are just some examples of the witch's brew of long-lived radioactive isotopes that are still coming down around us. So obviously the radionuclide problem is not going to go away overnight. He added, respirators can also provide important protection against various forms of biological attack, which will probably become a greater danger as more people suffer from compromised immune systems from radiation, all of which encourages the spread of pandemics. Major Fox has created a web page that provides more background on these issues, entitled Individual and Group Radiation Protection and Contamination Avoidance, that can be found online. Major Fox says he personally uses 2 forms of respirators and gets some interesting stares when he wears them around town. The public needs to be aware that the situation is serious. Most people do not have a clue. Ever since Fukushima fallout started to hit America about a week after the March 11, 2011 meltdowns, United States residents with radiation detection devices have been detecting jumps in radiation levels from rain-soaked samples that have been vast multiples over normal background levels. One example reported on YouTube is Stay Out of the Rain, radioactive fallout 49 times greater than background, posted on April 14, 2012 by Potter blog located in St. Louis, Missouri. This same St. Louis, Missouri source also reported a significant pickup in radiation on a respirator he wore while mowing his backyard for 2 days on a dry day in Is Your Lawn Radioactive Too? N95 dust mask test, posted on June 2, 2011 on YouTube. Major Fox describes his 2 respirators. First, I bought a harmful dust N95 respirator with exhalation valve, produced by MSA, listed at safetyworks.com. It only cost $6.99. According to instructions contained in the product packaging, N95 means it is rated by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health to be a 95% filter efficiency level against all particulate aerosols that are free of oil. I also bought a P100 rated toxic dust respirator by MSA, listed at safetyworks.com, which cost me $39.99. In addition, I purchased a pack of replacement cartridges for $14.99. P100 means a particulate filter with 99.97 filter efficiency level, effective against all particulate aerosols. He adds, there are many other fine respirators that provide good values made by other companies, but I thought I would start with MSA in order to provide specific examples of product and price information. Fox noted that an excellent documentary entitled On Fukushima Beach from YouTube has a number of video clips of pedestrians in Tokyo, some of whom are wearing what looks like Japanese counterparts to the N95 mask. The thought occurred to me that given the continuing pattern of hot rains that we are experiencing across America, we should see Americans doing the same thing. Yet I have not seen one single person out on the streets wearing any kind of protective devices. Even the clerk who rang up my purchase at the hardware store that sells respirators knew absolutely nothing about the Fukushima radiation threat. He explained that if a person can get a significant increase over background radiation in his respirator just by mowing a dry yard on a clear day without any visible dust mobilization in the St. Louis area, it is totally logical to me to strongly suspect that wearing respirators should become a daily practice everywhere in America for anyone who wants to protect his or her own health. Immediately after buying my respirators, I experimented with wearing them and discovered that I can breathe very easily with both of them, even to the point that I can wear them comfortably while doing strenuous exercises like push-ups and sit-ups with heavy breathing. However, the package instructions for the P100 state that one sign that it is time for a filter replacement is when breathing becomes more difficult. Also, the MSA P100 filter has a red strip around it that is supposed to turn brown once it gets heavily contaminated. Although this may only relate to the kinds of aerosolized contaminants that miners, painters, and other kinds of people who work around ordinary types of hazardous plumes and fumes encounter, as opposed to the radionuclides encountered by nuclear workers or nuked populations like ourselves. I decided to establish a precedent for Western Pennsylvania as a Fukushima radiation demonstrator and started wearing both types of masks everywhere outside, he said. He has begun, too, to wear a sign that says Fukushima radiation activist. He also carries some handout literature to assist in his efforts to educate the public. Of course, I have to use some common sense and flexibility in the way I go about wearing my respirator, said Fox. Given the current level of public ignorance, it is probably a very good idea for me to take my respirator off whenever I walk inside a bank to avoid triggering a call for the police, since I might appear like someone who is about to stage a holdup. I can also see how certain store managers might be put on edge. I need to find a way to balance my right to protect myself and engage in public demonstration with the understandable concern that many store managers may feel about how my appearance could frighten away customers. Major Fox says as he began pursuing his new lifestyle, a lot of other ideas and questions started occurring to him. First, why didn't I start doing this back in March 2011 when the radiation first hit, he asked. The answer, of course, is ignorance. I had no idea how hard we were getting hit with radioactive iodine, xenon, and a myriad of other isotopes. He did, however, make one very good move during this period. He got in touch with one of the world's leading radiation experts, scientist Murray, who, he says, suggested that he start staying indoors and out of the rain. One problem for someone doing strenuous physical activity outdoors is radioactive cesium uptake in the heart muscles. This has apparently been happening at an unusually high rate to many relatively young and otherwise fit athletes who have been dropping dead of heart attacks in our post-Fukushima meltdown era around the Northern Hemisphere in the middle of competitions or during training. He advises that everyone should own both the N95 and the P100 respirators. The reason is that the N95 can be folded up and stuck in one's pocket, and hence is easy to have on hand anywhere. In contrast, a P100 mask is much bulkier and heavier, and of course not as compact. It is more likely when someone makes a quick dash out the door somewhere, like a quick run over to the local grocery store, that it will be left behind. Major Fox explained that people need to always carry N95 respirators in their pockets for situations when rainfall comes unexpectedly, since most radionuclides come down in the rain. The N95s are so cheap, why would anyone not want to have one at all times? Sudden gusts of wind, particularly when a lot of dust is getting kicked up, is another reason to wear the mask, he says, especially with any wind speed over 5 to 10 miles per hour, since this is when many radionuclides get remobilized into the atmosphere. Major Fox says that after analyzing the horrible effects of radiation poisoning, a subject most Americans are not even aware of, He is now part of a new counterculture and encourages others to join him. I am countering the culture of the establishment, which is essentially a criminal culture of denial, deception, and even global depopulation genocide. When I wear a mask as I drive in my car or walk down the street in a downtown area, I am basically telling everybody that I am opting out on a broader social level, completely outside the propaganda matrix, and rebelling against people like Hillary Clinton, who have signed on to the importation of radioactive food from Japan without any screening. Instead of conducting a sit-down strike somewhere, such as in the troubled Occupy movement, we can make a different kind of social statement without becoming a public nuisance by simply wearing protective masks everywhere. This, in essence, says that we are not only protecting ourselves against Fukushima radiation, but also protesting the toxic society and toxic establishment that have created this horrible mess to begin with, explained Fox. What a powerful article this is. I don't know if Jules is still around. Darren Stone from the front started wearing a mask around probably a year, maybe a little over a year ago, and he said he was going to write Fukushima right along the top of it. You know, I have a box of them in my house. We hardly ever use them. I use it more when I change the cat box than I do wearing outside, which is really wrong. That's not what I bought them for, especially considering how sick I've been. I am going to actually hang a couple of masks right by my front door so that I grab one anytime that I go outside, and anyone else that can grab one, you know, who wants to grab one can too. Anybody who comes over, you know, and this is kind of the new world that we live in. We're in this huge science experiment besides, you know, the radiation and everything that's in the food and water that we consume and in our air from chemtrails. I don't know how many of you have a noticeable effect after planes are spraying in your area, but the next day everyone in my house has like allergy type symptoms, really red, burning eyes, sore throat, heavy coughing, and this is not our imagination. This has happened over and over and over again. So I will be looking forward to having Major Fox on an upcoming show so he can talk more about what he's doing today as a Fukushima activist. I just love that article. In fact, I will get a link. He copied it right into my email with the picture, so I don't have a link to the actual article, but I will find one and I'll post it later today in the chat box. I also wanted to let people know, you may have heard that Helen Caldicott had her last show, If You Love This Planet. I believe it was Sunday, but it might have been the Sunday before. And it's not because she's dropping out of sight. It's because she's taken on this huge endeavor to hold a symposium on March 11th and 12th in New York City. And the symposium is called The Medical and Ecological Consequences of the Fukushima Nuclear Accident. It's going to be held at the New York Academy of Medicine. And I will drop a link into this. If any of you guys live locally and can attend this, it would be awesome. And we would love to set somebody up like with a Ustream so they can go around and talk to people there and tape some of the classes. I'm sure a lot of it will appear on YouTube. A unique two-day symposium at which an international panel of leading medical and biological scientists, nuclear engineers, and policy experts will make presentations on and discuss the biomedical and ecological consequences of the Fukushima disaster. It'll be held at the New York Academy of Medicine on March 11th and 12th, 2013, the second anniversary of the accident. The public is welcome. It is chaired by Donald Loria, MD, Chairman of the Department of Preventive Medicine and Community Health of the University of Medicine and Dentistry in New Jersey, and it is a project of the Helen Caldicott Foundation. I used to help put these meetings together for the Academy of Ophthalmology, and there is so much work that goes into this. It takes a year to plan one of these events, and the reason for that is you have to rent out the space. It's usually in a hotel or at a hospital, so you have to have the conference rooms reserved. You have to have audio visual equipment so that all the speakers can plug their jump drive into a projector for their talks, because they all have, slideshows that go with their talks. And, you have to have like audio visual people on hand during this entire thing, because stuff always happens to the equipment. You have to reserve blocks of hotel rooms. You have to put together a list of, flight info, airport info, hotel information. Sometimes you can even get a hotel to agree to give a lower rate to people who are coming to the meeting if you reserve like a big block of rooms. And then you need to put together info about restaurants and about taxi cabs and everything for these people, because a lot of these like doctors and people who come into this, they don't have any time to research and find their way around New York City. If they're flying in from somewhere for this meeting, they need like a pamphlet that tells them everything to do. And so, this is what Helen Caldicott is doing right now, is putting together all of the logistics of this program, in addition to putting together a schedule and assembling all these different speakers. And I imagine that they'll probably have, some of the guys that did the consequences of Chernobyl at this meeting. And there's probably going to be, doctors from Japan coming to this meeting, and hopefully doctors from the U.S. will come to this meeting. Now, the registration info says that in advance it's $60. This includes attendance for both days and lunch for both days. There's an online form where you can pay on PayPal. Students who have a valid student ID get $10 off that. It's only $50 if you're currently a student. Registration forms can be found online, must be filled out completely and accurately in order to ensure easy check-in. And then they want you to, indicate if you're a vegetarian or not. This is here's the list of presenters. Wow. Dr. Tim Masu, who's the professor of biological science at the University of South Carolina, is going to talk about Chernobyl, Fukushima, and other hot places. Ken Buessler, a marine scientist from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, is going to talk about the consequences for the ocean of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident. David Lochbaum from the Union of Concerned Scientists. His topic is Another Unsurprising Surprise. Dr. Vladimir Vertelecki, who Jeff Wefferson talks about all the time. He is the former chair of the Department of Medical Genetics and Birth Defects at the University of South Alabama. He's going to talk about congenital malformations associated with the Chernobyl accident. Dr. Marek Nedzila, professor of pediatrics from Poland, is going to talk about thyroid pathology in children in reference to Chernobyl and Fukushima. Dr. Yablokov, Russian Academy of Sciences, Lessons from Chernobyl. Akio Matsumura, founder of the Global Forum for Parliamentary Leaders on Global Survival, What Did the World Learn from the Fukushima Accident? Robert Alvarez, senior scholar in Institute for Policy Studies, former DOE management of spent fuel pools and radioactive waste, will be his topic. Arnie Gunderson, nuclear engineer from Fairwinds, What Did They Know and When Did They Know It? Dr. David Brenner, Higgins Professor, Radiation of Biophysics, College of Physicians and Surgeons at Columbia, will talk about mechanistic models for effects of ionizing radiation on living systems. Dr. Stephen Wing from the University of North Carolina will talk about epidemiology studies of radiation releases, lessons past and present. Stephen Starr, senior scientist, Physicians for Social Responsibility, will talk about the implication of the massive contamination of Japan with radioactive cesium. And Dr. Ian Fairley, who is a radiation biologist, will talk about the nuclear disaster at Fukushima from source terms and initial health effects. Andrew Kantner, MD, immediate past president of Physicians for Social Responsibility, is moderator for the health effects panel. Dr. Hisaku Sakiyama, doctor of medicine former researcher, risk assessment of low-dose radiation in Japan, what became clear to the National Diet of Japan Independent Investigation Committee. Dr. Herbert Abrams from Stanford will be talking about the hazards of low-level ionizing radiation. Kevin Camps from Beyond Nuclear will talk about 70 years of radioactive risks in Japan and America. And of course, Dr. Caldicott, founding president for Physicians for Social Responsibility, the Nuclear Age and Future Generations. I didn't think I was going to get that all in before the end of the show. So if any of you guys can go to this, let us know so we can set you up with a Ustream. We'll be back Thursday. Stay safe, everyone. Wear your mask.
Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither while they pass, they slip away across.